So we can go ahead and get started. It looks like the first question is from Mike Terror. He said he will miss the call, so I'm going to vocalize his question for him. It says, with the focus being on SMAL for different product teams, so stage monthly active users for different product teams, is there an overarching project or effort to make other stages more discoverable? And he says, for example, trying to get graphs of a deployed application requires navigating around between our defined silos rather than showing them on the project overview page. So let me start by saying each group is responsible for discoverability in their own area, and that is something we absolutely consider as part of the design process. You can see an example of that is on slide 15, where we're looking at the discoverability of our installation support. So where you can install, and then also discoverability of documentation. So that's just one example. And we have done research on overall GitLab navigation, and we do know some things about that. But first I want to actually ping Nick Post, who I believe I saw on here, about the graphs, because I know that's something he's thinking deeply about. So let me mute myself. And Nick, do you have anything to add?
Sorry, let me just catch up on the question again. I wasn't quite listening. What was it? Sorry.
Yeah, so if you look at 2A, Mike says, trying to get graphs of a deployed application requires navigating around between our defined silos rather than showing them on the project overview page. As our designer for analytics, I know that you're thinking about this very deeply. So I wanted to see if you have anything to add about the work that you're doing there.
Yeah, at the moment we're doing a little bit of information architecture level information architecture work to understand just the general layout of GitLab and whether that's effective or not. I think basically what's required is to start mapping out a number of user flows that actually enter into analytics, and then use that as a way to frame principles about how we actually address that challenge. Is that clear? Does that answer the question?
Mike's not here, so I don't know, but I'll say I took some notes down in the agenda, and if he has follow-on questions, he can ask you. Jackie, you have something to add there?
Yeah, so in growth, the growth teams for conversion and expansion, they look at this quite a lot. If you look at slides 33 and 36, I think it was, there's a couple of examples of changes that we've made recently or experiments that we're running that improve discoverability of features. And like the CI pipeline one that I think is slide 33 is a pattern that we can reuse in other places. So yeah, there's that. And then the second part is there's an epic around onboarding. It's based off of one of our onboarding UX scorecards. It's the recommendations. It has a lot of ideas and kind of strategic approaches that we would like to pursue around onboarding users more effectively, which a big part of that is obviously like helping people discover features and how to use them. And then I would just add, I think Christy already mentioned this, but you know, the growth team is we're always open to ideas about how to do this better. The product teams, they know their users and their products best. So if you have ideas, bring them to the growth team, and we would love to design an experiment around it, or to help you get those implemented, or to give it a try and see what works. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add, but definitely follow up with me or any of the other growth product designers if you have any other feedback or questions.
Thank you, Jackie. And Mike Long, it looks like you've got something to add.
Yes, Nick Post has worked on something called object-oriented design, and I was trying to find the issue just now. But I believe that can actually help us componentize different capabilities throughout the application. They present themselves at the right moments, rather than having these sort of siloed experiences throughout the app. So just wanted to add that. I'll put a link to the issue in this doc.
I'm going to pause just for a moment to see if anyone has any follow-on questions to Mike's question. Sid, you're up.
Oh, thanks for the playlist. Very, very cool. I'll tend to watch a few of those. Thanks for making a playlist. That makes it much easier. How's the conversion to Figma going? I'm asking because I saw a blog post about how to use Sketch.
See, I have to unmute too. So the conversion to Figma is going pretty well, and I'm going to let Jeremy Elder jump in with details.
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Sid. It is going very well, and that's a really good blog post. And that was a really awesome effort. And I think tools aside, we could do that in any tool. However, with Figma, I think it's going to open us up to have more opportunity to do that even with community contributions and collaboration, and to even pair it up with sync as well, so that we can kind of combine the two when necessary. Just because of the multiplayer aspects of Figma, we can be efficient as we work in that. But just to my point in the answer there, we're covering a lot of ground. We're initially focused on just transitioning and having parity with what exists today in Sketch to Figma. And that initially looks like our components. And I will say, just related to your question, we've had a lot of good async work out of that, and it's been a lot easier because we can easily jump into those components. We're not having to pull files down, create branches, etc., do pushes to see the latest that anyone is working on. It's been just streamlining async work for us, and I think it makes it a lot faster to have feedback. One other last note, and I'll pass it to Jarek to voice his, is that with Figma, we're also able to have more contextual design feedback. So because commenting is built right into it, we can actually comment right into, you know, the pixel that we're wanting to discuss. And I think that really helps async as well, so that we're not trying to map a comment in an issue or a thread to a design in a separate document. We're able to have a closer connection. So Jarek, do you want to voice your answer?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. This is going to lead to a simpler workflow for contributing to Pajamas. Before, we had to commit sketch files and changes to sketch files in GitLab design, and then update the documentation in Pajamas. And now that we're in Figma, it's just going to be within one repository in Pajamas. So it's going to make contributing much simpler. And there's a work in progress merge request in there for that issue template.
Thanks, Jarek and Jeremy. Kristen.
Yeah, I'm excited as well to see the conversion to Figma. I think it's really awesome. I was just curious, as the team has been working with it, are there any new processes around Figma, around locking or approving the comps that you're working on that you may have learned, or process around using Figma with issues, either embeds or links that the team might want to share?
Yeah, I'll post a link in the document. I'm just pulling up really quick. We do have new contribution guidelines for Figma that deal with the workflow of what it looks like to make a changes, to get approval. We do have a few issues open right now where we're deciding on what maintainership looks like for those files, for those assets, for both Pajamas UI kit as well as different stage group work, just to make sure that we are the individuals that are posting updates and publishing these things, are familiar with the workflow for those files. As far as it relates to the product, we're still following our traditional workflow of updating more static comps and working through the design tab when applicable. I would like to, as we complete the migration, consider what we could do to actually use Figma's live embed feature. And Figma live embed is, it essentially embeds a live iframe of real-time design. And I know we block iframes for security reasons. It'd be great to take a look at that so that we could actually embed live design within issues, so that we don't fall back on static comps. We actually have real-time design in the issues. And I think that's something that we'll work towards. But at the moment, current workflow with working in GitLab and design is the same, just a different guideline, which I'll post here for actually working in Figma.
Thanks, that would be awesome. And I have heard from customers that live embed can be a little scary because it doesn't lock. So you could have a design change right while it's going through engineering without a process there. So that was the other question I was asking around snapshotting or getting some approval state. So that's just something to think about, whether we've done it on our team yet or not. But
it's a great question. Part of our workflow does address that because we suggest that if you're going to make a change, you create your own personal draft aside from the current approved state. And then we review there in a draft state, and then before we bring in any kind of breaking or progressive changes.
Cool, thank you. I'd love to see the issues.
Thank you both for that. The one little thing I'll add is that the transition from Sketch to Figma is not done yet. The UX Foundations team and a lot of folks in general have done a lot of work on this, but it's been a small team because we didn't yet have our contract signed with Figma, which is still true today. I'm working through the contract process. So it's part of our budget. Once everything is finalized, then we're going to open it up more broadly. Okay, Sid.
Yeah, the PMs now do a quarterly walkthrough of their own section. And if you watch those, you see them very quickly say, oh, and take a note. And it's amazing. Like, these are like very high level walkthroughs, so there should be no surprises, but there's like five surprises per 10 minutes or something like that of things that could be better. And it kind of makes me think that we're very focused on the new things we're adding, but we don't have a lot. We don't go back and revisit what we already have in that high level workflow. What could be the role of UX in this?
Yeah, so I want to say I agree with your assessment. We do focus really intently on new features, and historically we haven't focused on refinement. And I know I would love to see us prioritizing more of that work. For better or for worse, but I'll be honest, I didn't know that quarterly walkthroughs were happening. So I'm not familiar with any of that. I would like to be included in that. But more importantly, let me turn this over to my UX managers who are on the call and see if maybe they're aware of how UX is involved in this.
I'm not saying UX should be involved, that they're on YouTube, you can watch them, but maybe it's good that UX also does the same thing, like do a quarterly walkthrough. I don't think it's a lack. Involving is like coordination, and we want to be an asynchronous company. Like, we don't want to coordinate. It's fine that the PMs do it, but they're still finding a ton. And I bet that UXers have an even better eye for things that can be improved. So maybe it's helpful if the UXers also do a walkthrough. It can be separate. It doesn't have to be coordinated. It can be a separate effort.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, and this is what I was getting at, is we should be watching them. I just don't know much about them. So I haven't personally seen them. I'm going to go find them now. I don't know if any UX managers have anything to add to that. And if not, that's okay.
Yeah, I would say being in the growth team, I've kind of seen them happening, but not, I mean, within the growth team doesn't really apply, but the teams are doing the UX scorecards, which are by definition going back over and looking at the top tasks that people have to do in the product. So I think, like, I've noticed that the UX scorecard findings kind of overlap with the findings that the PMs have when they do a walkthrough. But I think at the very least, the each stage group designer should be able to be watching the walkthroughs that the PMs do, and then PMs should communicate their findings to their product designer so that they can collaborate and put those improvements in the backlog to work on.
Oh, that makes sense. Thanks.
I agree with you,
Thank you,
Jackie. It's similar. It's similar in XCI/CD. I feel a lot of the stuff is catching up in the scorecards creation, but also as PMs are going through the walkthroughs, I think a lot of this information is coming back in the issues later or in the PM UX discussions. But I actually like a suggestion of Sid to have a UX walkthrough. Maybe this is something that we should think about.
Yeah, maybe it's the same as a scorecard. I forgot about those.
To address the other piece of that, how do we prioritize that work? So it sounds like multiple people are going through and doing walkthroughs, scorecards, and recommendations are coming about, issues are created. But how do we prioritize depth into our product areas? I think that's where the real challenge is right now.
I think it's a great question. I'd ask slightly different. I'd ask, how much do we focus on the periphery and on the center? Like all the new features we're building by default are on the periphery of the product. They're a new part of the product. How much do we focus on the periphery versus the center? I'd love to hear Christy on that.
Yeah, we're looking right now. So going back to, we've got the UX scorecards, and many of those did focus on the center. The UX management team right now is going back and taking a look at all of the issues that were created, how many were created, how many we've actually addressed, and starting to get a sense of, did that work that we did to find those usability issues and create issues for them actually result in changes to the product? And we're doing that literally right now this week.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for the screenshots on slide 11 and 12, and maybe shadows. Make sure that the GC section of the handbook says that, like all presentations in GitLab, most of the content should be screenshot of the handbook, of issues, of merge requests, review apps, data and GitLab Insights, size and charts. But if you're creating the content specifically for the presentation, you're doing it wrong. And this is doing it right. So I want to call it out. This is awesome to see. I love the installation improvements on slide 15. That is a good example of like working at the center of the product and not the periphery. Maybe can someone maybe elaborate a bit or walk us through it?
Sunjung or Jackie?
Yeah. Someone just started mowing my lawn right outside my window. So there are a couple of things in motion around installation. Already, the Geo team has completed UX scorecards for installing Geo, which of course also involves installing GitLab, so it's relevant. There's also a scorecard in distribution that is around installation. That one is leveraging a lot of the findings from the scorecard that was done previously, but is also looking at the full user flow, which is also like, how do people find the installation software? How do people find the docs to begin with? And is that flow optimized? So that will involve, like the recommendations from that will involve working with other teams, for example, the website team, to improve some of the like landing pages for installation and other pages through the flow that get people to that page to begin with, right? Then there's a lot of documentation improvements that are in the works. And I don't know if Mike is on and wants to weigh in, but because I don't know the specifics on those, but I do know that basically when you're doing installation, you know, you have a terminal window, you have like the product, you have installation instructions. This is a big mental load to flip back and forth between them all. So really trying to streamline the docs is a very important part of this. And then lastly, the last paragraph in slide 15, the growth team, the acquisition team and growth, they're working customer journey mapping, which is like understanding what are all the things that happen along the way from like discovering that GitLab exists to buying it. And that includes like trying it, obviously. And so probably includes installing it. So looking at that whole customer journey to understand what are the pain points, what are the decision factors, motivations, and things like that. And so it's happening in the growth team, but the distribution team is kind of linked into that research, and we'll be picking up learnings and findings in order to make improvements to installation. Hopefully that covers it, but if anyone else has anything to add, please share it.
Yeah, so to give an idea of scope, like Geo is used by less than 1% of our users. 100% of our users hit this page, and it recently changed. Where now the first thing we call out, installing GitLab on a Raspberry Pi, where we also say you need at least 4 GB of RAM. And I think the most popular models for sure of the Raspberry Pi don't offer that. I wonder if any do. Also, this is like probably like less than 1% of the usage that we see of GitLab, and this is probably more than 50%. So my first impression is like, GitLab, is that made for Raspberry Pis? Like this is the worst experience you can possibly have with GitLab. And this is what we're calling out on our main page, that 100% of the people installing GitLab as the first thing. so simple things like that are just so important to get right. And it used to be that Ubuntu was the first thing, and then Debian, etc. So we got to make sure we nail the basics. Instead, we're in the periphery. We're nailing the installation experience of Geo, which is important. We're making money there. Our customers like it, but it's 1%. So let's make sure we do stuff like this, because this very important page for us, like this is our lifeblood. This is installation, new GitLab installations is our lifeblood. We're a product-led company. I'm in the last 10 commits on this page because there's been less than 10 commits in 9 months on this page. No one's caring, but there's not enough attention compared to the essentialness of this page to our company.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that specific example. I don't know if that was one that we had listed, but there's an issue. We're looking at that page. It's acknowledged that it's not laid out properly. It's not designed well. And so we're going to be looking at that and making changes.
Yeah. We in general, we need merge requests, not issues.
Yeah, actually, there is one issue that Jackie mentioned. It's under GitLab/com, and that has another like community contribution already. So there will be one merge request soon. And the first approach would be repositioning those like type of installation. And I would like to sort this out, like, for example, like outdated version of GitLab or some link is actually missing. So I'd like to remove them for the first iteration, and then would like to move on for the second iteration.
For sure. I've noticed the same thing. If you click on the IBM one, it now fails because they reorganized their website. This is on our main installation page. So instead of creating issues, let's start creating merge requests and actually fix things and put things in order. This is not a very complex page to rearrange. I fixed it 9 months ago. I made changes to it. We should be improving stuff. We should iterate. I'd much rather have a merge request with one improvement than an issue with 10 problems.
Yeah, I want to clarify that UX starts in an issue because we don't necessarily have the skills to make those changes in a merge request the right way, but our responsibility is to make sure that the issues that we create are broken down in a granular enough way that we can hand it to an engineer and have it be easily implementable. So I think part of the point you're making, Sid, is don't create an issue that has 10 different things that need to be changed. Make sure that those issues are something someone can pick up and do really easily. And we are focused on making sure that happens.
And the point I'm making is, in this specific instance, for this specific page, you can fix it yourself. So don't create an issue for stuff you can fix yourself. I've made edits to this page. Other people have. And removing that broken IBM tile is not rocket science. Our UXers can do that. I'm 100% convinced. So don't create an issue for something you can fix in 2 minutes.
Yeah, but point taken. And this is something I'd like to just discuss with you, probably also, Sid, at a larger level about kind of where our team's skills are. We have a variety of skills. It kind of depends on the person, but we can talk more.
Yeah, well, our mission is everyone can contribute. I'm pretty sure that every single person in the UX team can edit this page, and otherwise they can ask me for help because I'd be glad to help them.
Point taken. Thank you. I'm not sure who entered question 8.
I'm sorry, I dominated question 8. Deploy freezes. Hey, that sounds like something people want to see, but let's make sure there's an override. I think that's my point. Slide 35, it says buy to continue. We have great net expansion at GitLab because we allow people to kind of grow and then true up later on. The buy to continue is the opposite of that. So I saw that screenshot and I was worried.
I'll take a stab. This is Scott. I think my K is out there. This is for the .com customers, Sid. This isn't for
still that's growing twice the speed that our self-managed customers are growing. The idea for most .com services is that you add additional seats or like you add additional users and you get billed at the end of the month. That's how most people do it. What the screenshot says is to continue, you will have to purchase additional seats, which is the opposite of that.
Yeah, I can add to that, Sid. We've actually given the work that we've been doing for SeatLink and the quarterly co-term. We are going to pause that work, take a step back and see, given what we're doing for self-managed, can we leverage that so that we can get to a model that's similar for both? And that would involve, letting them add and then quarterly to start, most likely doing that co-term the same way with we're doing with self-managed. So that's the plan there.
That makes a ton of sense. But I think the fact that we went off to another thing, maybe people aren't aware, like, hey, it's super important to the success of this company that it's easy to grow GitLab. If you put roadblocks, this is a product-led company. If you put roadblocks on adopting the product, that's really going to hurt the company.
Point taken. Thank you.
Thanks.
I know we're a little over time, but we have one last question. Brian?
Yeah, I was just questioning, not only directly related to the UX, but partly this is that, we are seeing a number of customers in RFPs and, asking around, ADA 508 compliance and some other, regulations around how, compliant GitLab is for those who need accessibility. So I saw that there's a posted link in there, which is great. That's something that we need there, but I was just curious, and, are we, what plans we have to kind of work towards more of those standards? I think, things like that have been asked specifically are tab indexes to be able to navigate the pages through tabbing, which you can't do today, at least not very far past the navigation. So just wondering if there's plans to do more around that, and I appreciate the link there. Really, that's helpful.
Yeah, there are absolutely plans to do more. We also think that this is important. The work that we're doing on pajamas right now to get pajamas components implemented in the GitLab product will do a lot to improve these compliance issues. Tab indexing, I agree with you. I don't know if we have a specific issue around that. If we don't, I would love to have you create one. And Tori Davis is the manager of this, and she can work with you if you have questions or anything.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. This has been a wonderful discussion. I appreciate everything. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Too.
Thanks, Christy.